Hello and welcome to the DebtCircle Sundown brief for the 23rd of June 2026. Let us begin with the top 5 highest yield listed corporate bonds. Topaz 04 2026 traded at a yield of 18.35% with a trade value of 12.00 lakh rupees. Unifins Capital India Limited traded at a yield of 17.25% with a trade value of 50.00 lakh rupees. Best Capital Services Limited traded at a yield of 15.98% with a trade value of 113.50 lakh rupees. Akara Capital Advisors Private Limited traded at a yield of 15.90% with a trade value of 50.00 lakh rupees. Regency FinCorp Limited traded at a yield of 15.50% with a trade value of 12.00 lakh rupees. Moving to the top 5 highest yield unlisted corporate bonds. Infifresh Foods Limited traded at a yield of 17.00% with a trade value of 400.00 lakh rupees. FDPL Finance Private Limited traded at a yield of 16.00% with a trade value of 16.00 lakh rupees. Vadraj Cement Limited traded at a yield of 14.7625% with a trade value of 50.00 lakh rupees. Apex Homes Private Limited traded at a yield of 14.00% with a trade value of 3,534.27 lakh rupees. Nuvama Wealth Finance Limited traded at a yield of 9.00% with a trade value of 30.00 lakh rupees. Now, the mutual fund debt transaction update. Gross purchases stood at 32,009.42 crore rupees. Gross sales stood at 31,118.16 crore rupees. Net investment was 891.26 crore rupees. Net investment for June month to date stood at negative 84,962.990 crore rupees. Turning to FPI debt market investments. Under the general limit category, gross purchases were 1,089.52 crore rupees. Under the VRR category, gross purchases were 339.06 crore rupees. Under the FAR category, gross purchases were 1,451.82 crore rupees. Under the general limit category, gross sales were 160.36 crore rupees. Under the VRR category, gross sales were 797.79 crore rupees. Under the FAR category, gross sales were 621.40 crore rupees. Net investment under the general limit category was 929.16 crore rupees. Net investment under the VRR category was negative 458.73 crore rupees. Net investment under the FAR category was 830.42 crore rupees. For June month to date, net investment under the general limit category stood at 15,901.42 crore rupees. Under the VRR category, it stood at 3,548.57 crore rupees. Under the FAR category, it stood at 20,103.31 crore rupees. For calendar year 2026 year to date, net investment under the general limit category stood at 12,506 crore rupees. Under the VRR category, it stood at 597 crore rupees. Under the FAR category, it stood at 34,716 crore rupees. Now for money market rates. Call rate was 5.38%, tri-party repo stood at 5.24%, basket repo stood at 5.32%, special repo stood at 5.20%. Moving to India government bond yields. 1-year yield was 5.77%, 3-year yield was 6.29%, 5-year yield was 6.49%, 7-year yield was 6.70%, 9-year yield was 6.87%, 10-year yield was 6.83%, 15-year yield was 7.14%, 30-year yield was 7.45%. T-bill yields and auction cutoffs were as follows. 91-day T-bill yield was 5.26%, 182-day T-bill yield was 5.50%, 364-day T-bill yield was 5.79%. Now the liquidity indicators. Net liquidity injected stood at negative 80,203 crore rupees. Standing Deposit Facility or SDF stood at 118,739 crore rupees. Marginal Standing Facility or MSF stood at 2,236 crore rupees. Moving to MIBOR OIS rates, 1-year rate was 5.84%, 2-year rate was 6.00%, 3-year rate was 6.11%, 5-year rate was 6.27%. Modified MIFOR rates were as follows. 2-year rate was 6.88%, 3-year rate was 6.90%, 4-year rate was 7.00%, 5-year rate was 7.10%. Now for currency rates. The US dollar to Indian rupee closed at 94.79 compared with the previous level of 94.63. The euro to Indian rupee closed at 107.96 compared with 108.37 previously. The British pound to Indian rupee closed at 125.25 compared with 125.32 previously. The Japanese yen to Indian rupee stood at 0.59, unchanged from 0.59. The Chinese yuan to Indian rupee closed at 13.97 compared with 13.94 previously. Moving to the Indian rupee to Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee was at 1.59, unchanged from 1.59. The Chinese yuan was at 1.5994 previously. Moving to commodities and market indices. 24-karat gold, purity 99.9%, was quoted at 14,460 rupees per 10 grams, compared with 14,651 rupees previously. Silver was quoted at 2,450 rupees per 10 grams, compared with 2,500 rupees previously. Crude oil closed at $76.94 per barrel, compared with $78.15 previously. The Sensex closed at 76,200.68, compared with 77,094.07 previously. The Nifty closed at 23,824.10, compared with 24,102.90 previously. Finally, India's primary issuance in corporate bonds. Magenta Bilcon Private Limited announced an issuance of 20 crore rupees with a tenure of 60 months and a coupon of 1.00%. That concludes the DebtCircle Sundown brief for the 23rd of June 2026. Thank you for watching. Have a great evening.